That trailer just spectacular. My name is Nikiko Masumoto. Many of you have been with us this whole semester with me. I'm so grateful to have been on this journey. And tonight I get to be the kind of host of our program. That documentary, by the way, is already out. And if you haven't seen it, it is a must watch. You must watch the film. And we are so lucky this evening to have Dolores Huerta with us. Before we launch into a conversation with Dolores, I just wanted to take a second to kind of ground us in where we are in the semester and also this particular week. So I remember from my student days, we're in the middle of semester. Stress is probably high. We have midterms right now. Next week, I believe, is spring break, so you get a little reprieve. So we have that context that I know you're all working really hard in. And then we also have the context of this week in many different events happening. And I just wanted to acknowledge the humanness of myself and invite all of you to do the same. I'm feeling quite tender this week, and I'm entering this class with a lot of different emotions. I feel deep honor to be in the presence of Dolores Huerta, deep excitement to be in conversation. I also feel a little bit of sadness as this is my last class with you all. And then on a larger national scale, I'm feeling really tender about, first of all, the anniversary of the murder of Breonna Taylor and all of the activism and remembrances of her life and tragic death. And then I'm also feeling, as an Asian American, pretty tender about what just happened in Georgia. And I haven't fully processed what that means and what I need. So I just wanted to mark that, to be vulnerable and just say to anyone who's with us this evening who may be feeling tender or stressed or numb or triggered, that I hear you, I see you. We as a teaching team care about you. And if you need support, there's some resources that are sent out to all the UC Berkeley community, and we're going to repaste them here in the chat. And I also just wanted to offer, I'll hang out for a couple minutes after the class. If anybody just wants to be in space together, I'd be happy to be a partner in processing with you. So with all of that, I want to invite us to embrace the complexity of this moment, right? Both the joy of being together, of learning, and what's going on around us. So I want to invite us to just take 3 cleansing breaths. And as we do this breathing, let go of whatever is not serving you and invite in what you want to serve you this evening. So get comfortable, and we're just going to do 3 breaths. So inhale, pause, and exhale. Inhale, pause, and exhale. One more delicious breath. Inhale, pause, and exhale. It never ceases to amaze me, the power of returning to the breath. So thank you all for being part of that with me. It is now my deep honor. This is going to go on my bucket list of things that I've been able to do in my life, is to bring on screen and welcome Dolores Huerta. Dolores is the founder and president of the Dolores Huerta Foundation, amongst many, many things. I want to introduce Dolores by just sharing a couple words that I think of. Dolores, when I think of you, I think of the words living legend. I think of the word tenacious and undaunted. I think of the word of and for the people. And I think of the word brave. Thank you so much for being here. I want to also take a moment to read Dolores' official biography because it is part of our American history that we all need to know. So Dolores Huerta, president of the Dolores Huerta Foundation, is also a community organizer and labor leader. She has worked for civil rights and social justice for over 50 years, Think about that, over half of a century. In 1962, she and Cesar Chavez founded the United Farm Workers Union. She served as vice president and played a critical role in many of the union's accomplishments for 4 decades. In 2002, she received the Puffin Nation a national $100,000 prize for creative citizenship, which in true character to Dolores, she turned around and used to found the Dolores Huerta Foundation to serve community. The Dolores Huerta Foundation is connecting groundbreaking community-based organizing to state and national movements to register and educate voters, advocate for education reform, bring about infrastructure improvements in low-income communities, advocate for greater equality for the LGBTQ community, and create strong leadership development. She has received numerous awards, amongst them in 1998, the Eleanor Roosevelt Human Rights Award from President Clinton. And in 2012, President Obama bestowed Dolores with the Presidential Medal of Freedom, which is the highest civilian award in the United States. And in 2021, this year, USA Today called Dolores Huerta one of the Women of the Century and Glamour's Women of the Year Award. With all of that, I am just so honored. Thank you for being with us, Dolores.
No, thank you very much for inviting me. And I'm so happy that we have so many people here with us today. And I know that many of us that are in this event have been out there protesting and marching and Zooming for social justice. So I just want to thank you very much, all of you, for whatever you have been doing in this Zoom year to make our lives better for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Dolores. I so appreciate your time here. I was thinking in preparation for this evening of just the incredible career and your work over your lifetime. And I was thinking particularly about many of our students being in their late teens and 20s. And I wanted to invite you to bring us back to your life in your 20s. And tell us about the beginning of your community organizing and what you saw in the lives of farm workers and how you connected that to the seed of justice.
Well, if you don't mind, I would like to go back to my teens.
Yeah, please do.
And the reason I'm saying that, because I believe that my thirst for social justice started when I was a teenager. I grew up in Stockton, California, not too far from where you're at, there in Berkeley. And so many of my friends, we were a very diverse group. My friends were African Americans, Filipinos, Chinese, Japanese, Italians. So we were really a mixed group of folks. And the fact that when we would all hang out together, and the police didn't like to see us all, mixing up, and they didn't like to see young Anglo women, white women hanging out with kids of color. And so they would always give us a hard time, stopping us, frisking us. And that kind of all created a lot of anger because we all loved each other so much. And to have the police bother us just because we happened to be of different ethnic groups. And so, and I felt that there was nothing I could do about this, about the discrimination also that we faced in our high school. So when I learned that you could organize, which I was very fortunate when I was 25 years old to meet a man named Fred Ross, a senior, who also happened to be Anglo. And he taught me that you could really make a lot of change just by coming together and by talking about the issues and then deciding that we're going to do something to change this. And of course, I thought at that time, well, I can't do anything. I'm just one person. What could I possibly do? But he actually said, well, you can get together with a few people and then get together with more people and then organize some more people. And when you have a group, then you can start taking direct action and you can actually change things. So in my 20s then, I was, I think, 25 years old when I met Mr. Ross. And then we actually started doing what he said we could do. And it was like a big miracle. All of a sudden, you found you didn't have to take these discriminations. You could actually start going to city council meetings or board of supervisors meetings. You could challenge the police department. It's been a long struggle, but the thing is that I know we're not there yet. But once you learn that magic formula, and I know that marching and protesting, and I'm sure, as I said before, thanking you for those of you that have been out there marching, protesting, is so important. But the thing is that the other thing that I learned is that you have to do that more than march. You've got to get out there and you've got to get good people elected to office. And you can't do that unless you register people to vote and unless you get them to vote. And then you can, make sure that the changes that you want to happen will really happen. And I say that because a lot of young people think, oh, well, it's all I have to do is march. All I have to do is protest. But that doesn't cut it. Yeah, that really doesn't make it, because unless it's put into a law that can be implemented and where people can held accountable, then the change doesn't come.
This is so fascinating for me, Dolores. What you're doing is you're articulating a spectrum of skills and tools that you as a community organizer have in your tool chest. And I wondering if you could expand upon that a little bit. I was thinking in our class this evening, we have students from all over campus. So we have business students, we have students in humanities and sciences, in arts. And so each one of them, we're all being trained of how to look at a problem and how to solve it, right? A business major might look at a problem and think, oh, what's a product that I could invent to solve this problem? But for you, Dolores, as a community organizer, can you tell us, when you think about a problem, any problem, what are the community organizer tools that you pull out of your kit?
Well, I think the first thing that you have to do is find out why does this problem exist? What is the source of the problem? And what do we have to do to fix it? And the one thing that I've learned in working with people, the people that are affected by the problem, they have the solutions. Mm-hmm. They know what has to be done to fix the problem. Sometimes, though, they just don't have the capacity or they don't have the organization to change it. So it's not like they say rocket science. These are things that are very practical and that people can learn. But sometimes, and I'll give the example of the farm workers, because they were being discriminated, they were being treated like slaves. They were not getting paid enough money. When we started organizing, they did not even have toilets in the fields for the farm workers. If you can imagine that, especially for the farm worker women, and when you meet some of the women, I was with one of these women just recently, a couple of days ago, and she told me about how horrible it was for them as women to be out in a field, 20 miles from the nearest gas station, and women had to make a circle around each other and then maybe use a towel or a sheet to cover themselves when they had to do their business. And it makes you think, what kind of mentality of an employer would do that to any human being? Not only to men, but especially for women. And so one would think, well, the solution is really easy. All you have to do is get the boss to get a porta potty out there. But when this is part of the way that they treated farm workers to make them feel like they were less than human, the degrading and the demeaning of them and their work, then you know that the problem is a lot bigger. And for us trying to solve that, our first solution was, let's get the farm workers to go on a march. And they did. Let's get the farm workers to go on strike. And they did. But even that didn't work. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until we got millions of people, and I'm sure some of you, probably when you were little children or your parents or your grandparents were part of the movement that said to everybody, let's hit them in the pocketbook. Let's boycott their products so they can't make any money. And then when their pocketbooks started hurting, and then their conscience started hurting. And then, so you had 17 million Americans that stopped eating grapes, stopped buying grapes. And then the employer said, okay, now we will give the toilets to people. So sometimes the solutions are much closer at hand than they are at other times. That the main thing is, if sometimes you have to find more than one solution or what you think is a solution until you find the one that really can change and achieve the goal that you're trying to achieve. I know that was a very long answer, but I think I gave it more as an example in this story of how we can make things change.
Oh, I so appreciate this, Dolores. In that story, what I'm hearing is a joint, when you were understanding the problems of farm workers, which unfortunately still continue in some fields today, not all, but there's still not enough support for farm workers, as you know. And so what I'm hearing in your recounting of that story is not only was there a problem of inhumane working conditions and unsafe working conditions, but there was also the coupled problem of the dehumanization of farm workers. And when I hear you talk about organizing marches, I know that in order to get to the march, there were probably thousands of hours of house meetings, of knocking on doors, and developing relationships with folks. And in those relationships, I think part of your gift was power, of inviting people into their power. And so can you speak a little bit about, I've heard you say many times that when people can tell their own story, they retain some of their power. Can you tell us a little bit about, in the farm worker movement, your contributions to helping farm workers be able to tell their own stories?
Well, I would take it a little bit further than that.
Yeah.
I would say this, you know, Helen Keller, she had a saying, and I'm going to paraphrase it. And she said that the greatest evil that exists in human beings today, that scientists have never, or I say illness, that scientists have never been able to cure, is apathy.
Mm.
Is apathy.
Mm.
So if everybody in our country would kind of take the responsibility and commit to some kind of activism, then we wouldn't have all of the ills that we have in our society today. Mm. Of course, we can maybe respond to that by saying, well, hey, I didn't know that was happening to farm workers. I didn't know. And maybe back in the day, we could use that excuse, but today we can't, because everything is public. You know, we have access to all the information that we need. But so if everyone can say, I am going to commit to do some kind of activism to erase all of the ills that we have, if I will do something to end the racism, the homophobia, the sexism, the misogyny, the mass incarceration, you know, global warming and climate change. If everybody can say, I will do my part to challenge all of these things that are really affecting our world and our society, then we would have a quick fix. I mentioned the grape boycott, when we got 17 million Americans to say they wouldn't eat grapes. And just like that, you know, in spite of 5 years that we marched and 5 years that farm workers went on strike, and it wasn't until the American public just said, hey, we're just not going to eat grapes until the farm workers get their toilets and their drinking water, their rest periods, and then it happened. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that we have the strength in numbers, because we know the majority of the people in our United States are people of goodwill. And so if everybody says, I'm going to commit to end racism, I'm going to commit to end mass incarceration, you know, I'm going to commit that I'm going to elect progressive people to our state legislatures, our boards of supervisors, our Congress of the United States, then all of our problems would be fixed, you know, because this is a way that unfortunately, or fortunately, when we have a democratic society, this is the way that it works.
Yes, I hear you. And the idea that if 17 million people could do one thing together, that can be collective power, right? That is it's such a heartening reminder for me, because sometimes all of the compounding crises that we're seeing, racism, sexism, climate crisis, you know, all of these systems of domination sometimes feel overwhelming. Sometimes I feel overwhelmed with, oh my gosh, there's so much to do, and where do we start? Dolores, have you ever felt that?
Kind of like every day. And yes, because, you know, our organization at the Dolores Huerta Foundation, we're like a multi-issue organization. So we work on various issues at the same time. And one of our big issues is, of course, of ending the school-to-prison pipeline and ending the racial discrimination that exists in our school systems in the United States of America, because we know that students of color are not getting an equitable quality education. And it's not just in the Central Valley where I work. By the way, I'm in Kevin McCarthy's district, who happens to be the leader of the Republican Party. You know, all of those Republicans that did not vote for the care package that we're just getting from President Biden. That's where we work at. And the racial discrimination is so intense and so huge. We had to sue our current high school district because they expelled 2,000 students in 1 year, and 95% of which were Black and brown. Okay. So because of our lawsuit, we now have that expulsion from 2,100 students to 21. So the lawsuit worked. Not that they have completely eliminated all of the bias that they have in the school district, but we're still working on that. And that's what I mean by stopping the school to prison pipeline. But you know, the thing is that if all of us, we know that these wrongs are out there, but we all have to take responsibility, not because we're the ones that created all of these terrible things that exist in our society, but we want to take the responsibility to fix them, you know, to make sure that we do our little part to fix them. And one of the things that we can do is just be informed. As students, you all have access, of course, to all of the information that you need. And what's going on in the US Congress right now is really, really important. The US Senate specifically, there's a bill in the US Senate now for voting rights. So because at the state levels, and I know in California, we're very lucky. Maybe some of the students come from other states, but in places like Texas and all of the southern states now, they're trying to pass all of these laws to keep people of color from voting, and low income people also. But if that voting rights bill passes in the U.S. Senate, no matter these state legislatures will not be able to do that. There's another law out there for to give equal rights to women. So a lot of women are saying, hey, don't we already have equal rights? Well, actually, we don't. There is a law called the Equal Rights Amendment. And that will be written in law that men and women are equal. How about that, everybody? All the ladies out there,
it has never passed, right, Dolores? It still hasn't passed.
But it's going to be in the Senate. It's already been proposed in the Senate of the United States of America. So for those of you that have relatives and friends in other states, please tell them to write their senators and say, it's time that we pass the Equal Rights Amendment. And then, of course, we've got the immigration reform bill out there, too, that we want to try to pass for all of those hardworking farm workers and other undocumented people that are working so hard in our country, not only to pick our food, to clean our buildings, to take care of the children, to take care of the elderly, all of the service work that they do to keep us safe. And Michael Moore, I just want to say this with Coco. I saw Michael Moore on Broadway, and he said this: when you wake up in the morning, what do? We wash our face, we brush our teeth, and then we call our congressman. So if everybody can remember that, that's really important to remember. So we have to be part of what we call a living democracy. We have to be part of a living democracy, because even, as I said before, with all the marches that the farm workers did and the strikes and even the boycotts that we did, it was not until it was written into a law. You have to have bathrooms in the fields. You have to have porta potties in the fields for your farm workers. You know, so even it was farm workers in California that went on strike and did the boycott, and some were killed. 5 martyrs that we have. People in Texas, people in New York State, farm workers in those places, they have toilets in the field.
I think that speaks to the power of activism translated into policy, right? That the ramifications are far-reaching for betterment of all people's lives.
Right.
While we're on the topic of current day kind of democracy and political policies. Eva, would you mind bringing up the slides? We wanted to have your opinion on a little bit of what just got passed in Congress, right? The American Rescue Plan. And I wanted to make a couple connections because we've been spending our whole semester talking about food and food systems, that there's a lot of different pieces in the policy that relate to agriculture and food. So I just wanted to share a couple of highlights. So in the American Rescue Plan, which was passed, $4 billion of the plan go to the USDA, the United States Department of Agriculture. And of that of those monies, most of it, 3.6 billion, is dedicated to supporting food supply chain, which is interesting. And then apart from that, there's other provisions in this $4 billion. But then apart from that, the second big bullet is over 1 billion is dedicated for grants and loans to improve access for socially disadvantaged farmers, ranchers, forest landowners, in addition to scholarships, outreach, financial training, and other technical assistance. We have spent time this semester talking about reparations and how we might correct some of the wrongs of American history, which has really been about land theft, whether it was of indigenous people, of different groups, obviously theft from African Americans, theft and denial of access to land for Asian immigrants in the early 1900s. And so I just wanted to pause and ask Dolores, as you hear that this policy is passed, that there's going to be $1 billion dedicated to improving access to land for, and as I read this, socially disadvantaged farmers, meaning hopefully farmers of color. What does that sound like to you? What questions do you have about that? Are you excited about that? Are you skeptical? How do you read that?
Well, I'm excited about it, and I'm also skeptical at the same time. We know that in California, especially since we are kind of the breadbasket of the San Joaquin Valley of California, it's kind of the breadbasket for the state of California, but also for many parts of the world. But we have, as you know, Nikiko, agribusiness. And so we have a small farmer in California, unlike maybe your family, might have 1,000 workers. So our land in California, it's actually like one of the, you might say, banana republics, because the percentage of owners of the land is very, very small. Mm-hmm. So you might have like 10%. I don't know what the latest statistics are, but maybe 10% of the farmers I'll say employers or the agribusiness owners probably own 90% of the land. So it's very hard for small farmers to be able to compete with agribusiness. I think the one exception of this, and let's hope that part of that $1 billion goes to organic farmers, because there is where you have a lot of small farmers that are not only growing food, but growing food without pesticides. Because it's the big landowners that use a lot of the pesticides and fungicides and all of these economic poisons that are being put on our food. And unfortunately, the application of these economic poisons is not under our Health and Human Services where it should be. It's under the EPA, or it's under the farmers, under agriculture. And that needs to be changed. That's one of those things that we have to start working on to change, so that the use of poisons, of pesticides on our food, that somehow we can take control of this. Because the organic farmers, they don't use poisons on our food. They have natural ways that they can keep pests from attacking the food supply. And I know a lot of people don't. I think people in Berkeley might, because you have some nice food markets over there where they do sell a lot of organic food. And I know it's more expensive than the other food that is grown. But when you think you're spending a little bit more of the nutrition that's going into your body, and you're not putting poison in your body, and you might be paying a little bit more for the food, but at the end of the day, you are saving maybe money that you might have to pay on a hospital bill or on doctors because you become sick. So we have to do everything that we can to support organic farmers. And so we'll have to wait and see where that money goes. I hope that $1 billion doesn't go just to the big agribusiness owners. When the first HEROES Act that passed, a lot of that money went to the big growers. Many of the farm workers, especially undocumented workers, in California, luckily, Governor Newsom was able to give them like $600 per person and $1,200 per family, but it didn't even reach all of the undocumented workers.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, that's why also we have to support immigration reform, because many of the people that are putting the food on our table every day just happen to be undocumented farm workers.
Absolutely. I'm hearing calls from you, Dolores, to make sure we have to watch this money. We have to watch where it goes and make sure we're in the rooms helping to make sure it's accessible to the people who are going to shape our food system to a healthy, sustainable, fair one. I so appreciate both your excitement and your healthy skepticism. I want to shift gears a little bit and bring one of our graduate students, Kelsey Wasserman, on with us. Kelsey has a question herself about healthcare and caring for farm workers, and then is also going to bring in some of our student questions. So Kelsey, thanks for joining us.
Hello, thank you. And thank you for being here, Dolores. It's so exciting. I was thinking about, just in light of the pandemic, what do you think has been going really well for farm workers right now, and what could be better? And if in particular there are any sub issues where students could best organize and help support farm workers in this moment, we'd love to hear some of them.
Well, the farm workers, as you know, in some respects, we could say that they might have been lucky because they were able to continue to work, else we wouldn't be able to eat, right? But so they were definitely defined as essential workers. But at the same time, because of their work, they were not given the protective equipment that they needed. I mentioned the fact that we have agribusiness in California. So, for instance, one of the big companies is Dole. The big pineapple company also owns thousands of acres and tens of thousands of acres of land in California. Well, the people that own that company, they are not out there in the fields with their workers. They're in their offices, maybe in San Francisco or in Los Angeles. And the foremen and the labor contractors that are the ones that are out there with the workers, well, they don't have the resources to give the workers what they need. So many workers were not given the protective equipment that they needed. The incidence of deaths and illnesses from COVID-19 among the farm workers is very, very high. I'm sure all of you know that the people of color are the ones that were most badly affected by COVID-19. So that was unfortunate for the farm workers. In this new measure that has just been passed, President Biden's new measure that they just passed, the American Rescue Plan, there is going to be some relief for even undocumented farm workers in the new measure that they just passed. But they were very severely and badly affected. And I want to say that the farm worker children, again, when you have discrimination and the distribution of resources, it's always the poor people that are hit the hardest, the low-income communities that are hit the hardest. The farm worker children were very badly affected because in many of the rural areas, in this rich agricultural land that we have, they don't have broadband.
Right.
They don't have broadband. They don't have computers. So they couldn't even do the homework that they were assigned now that they had to do the school virtually. So they have been so devastated. It's going to take a long time to recover. And we're going to need a lot of help to be able to help the farm worker families to recover from the pandemic. And so we'll probably be calling on all of you at some point to come on down to the Valley, come on down and help us. And I hope you'll answer the call.
Oh, go ahead, Nikiko.
Absolutely. On behalf of all the Valley, everybody's welcome. And I just wanted to make one connection to what Dolores is offering about students, particularly in the Valley. My mom happens to be on an elected official and serves as on the Fresno County Board of Education. And she just recently shared with me that in Fresno County, there are thousands of students who have just disappeared, that teachers, schools, principals cannot find them. They don't know where they are. And many things might have happened. It might be they don't have access to telephones, they don't have access to internet, as Dolores is saying. And it also could be that they had to move because they either couldn't afford their rent anymore. But this is a real issue that definitely we need to help and keep reminding ourselves that there are people who are falling between the cracks.
I definitely agree. As a former teacher, it has been very discouraging and stressful to see the state of schools today, even the ones that are really doing their best to be innovative. And there has been some great innovation happening. A lot is slipping through the cracks, and it's been tough. I want to switch gears a bit. I love that you kept mentioning that everyone can play their part in this. And I know in past interviews, you've mentioned that your mother has been a driving force for you and an inspiration to you. And we have quite a few students who have kids, and I think you can start young with getting involved. So I'm curious about some of the things that your mom may have done when you were younger that may have pushed you or oriented you towards social justice or service.
Well, one of the directions that my mother gave me, or an instruction, you might call it, from the time that we were little kids, my two brothers and myself, later on my two sisters, but she always said, when people need help, you have an obligation to help them, even if you don't know them. But if there's anything that you can possibly do to help them, you have to do it. The other thing she said is, don't wait for them to ask. Don't wait for them to ask. If there's any way that you can help them out, do it. And the other thing she said is, don't expect a reward. Don't expect praise or recognition, because if you do something just for an advantage, then you're just helping that person out of your own self-interest. And I think this is a beautiful thing about when we commit to service to others, is because when we do that, not only does it make us feel really, really good, we get a lot of dopamines, we feel, but we know that we're doing something of service to others. And the other thing is that when you really, and I know for students, when I say this, I know it's hard because you all have so much homework to do and papers to write, but when you actually take an action that will make somebody else's life better, it actually diminishes the problems that you have in your own life, because you were able to focus on, I had, many children, and a lot of problems, but with my activism, I never felt sad. I always felt really good because I knew I was doing something to help other people. And I think that it's so gratifying, and it's such a great reward. And so I really want to say, I encourage everybody to do the same thing. And there's one way that you can all help. I'm going to give you a really easy way to help farm workers out. There's going to be a bill in the state legislature in California that farm workers, when they're trying to organize a union at their company, that all they have to do is sign a card. Right now, the way that the law is, the Agricultural Labor Relations Law, which gives farm workers the right to organize, they have to have a secret ballot election. And we all say, well, that's great, but what we're promoting is something like mail-in ballots, that farm workers, all they have to do is sign a card. If they can put the signature on the card and say, we want the union to represent us, that makes it a lot easier for the farm workers to organize their union, because that way the employer doesn't know who's voting. They can't put pressure on them and threaten them if they vote for the union. And it'll make it so much easier for the farm workers to be able to organize the rest of California. Because right now they're pretty much like in the Salinas area, and they don't have very many contracts, especially in the San Joaquin Valley. I'm not with the Farm Workers Union anymore, but I still want to help the farm workers out. We help them out in terms of the families and the work that we do, our educational work, our youth groups, our, helping people out with money. We've raised money so that we can help, especially some of these undocumented families. This is what we do with my foundation. But if we want to help farm workers really raise up, let's support this bill, okay? It's a farm worker right to vote bill in Sacramento, and you can what we're going to do, we're going to send an email, right? How long does it take to send an email? Just a few minutes. but we can all make that happen.
So true.
Could it be a class assignment?
I think
It
we
can
can
be
make that work.
an invitation for sure, an invitation to being active citizen. Thank you so much. And it seems like, Kelsey, that Dolores, you answered some of our student questions already. Michelle and Ella submitted questions, and I think you already answered them. So you're clairvoyant. Thank you. It's so perfect.
And as
If
one
there's
reminder, I'm going to put the link to the foundation just one more time in the chat so everyone can stay in the loop with the Dolores Huerta Foundation, just so you guys can keep it top of mind.
So I hope all of the students, I know with everything that we're facing right now, that we're hearing a lot about, trying to get rid of oppression, dismantle the systems of oppression in our country. But don't forget the labor unions while you're doing this, because unfortunately, a lot of students, unless they come from a family that is involved in labor unions, they don't know that much about labor unions. And just remembering that so much of the wrongs that we have today in our society, they come from slavery. They come from slavery. And what is slavery? Really, it says that you have to give up your energy and your work for nothing, right. That you have to give up your life to make somebody else rich. And this, of course, transfers into women also. Women are supposed to take care of the home, take care of the kids, and not expect to have any wages or even often be recognized for what they do. And this is also about manual labor, people that work with their hands, like the farm workers, that somehow they're supposed to do all of this work for free. And their families are not supposed to be respected or recognized for the work that they do. So we have to I hope that people can include the study of labor unions, because the labor union is basically what the labor union is workers coming together so that they can get the respect and recognition that they do, and so that they can advocate for themselves, not only on the job, but in the state legislature and in the Congress. This is all that a labor union is. So yeah, please include that. And if you haven't already, include it in the classes that you are taking right now, and research what labor unions are. It's an organization of workers fighting for themselves, for better benefits and better wages. And also, and I know I don't have to tell the students this, but we have to keep working to make sure that, and it will happen in your lifetime, I can promise you, because you're the ones that are going to make it happen, so that we will see the day in your lifetime when all college tuition is free. So when you can go to any college of your choice, free. So we'll see the day when we have free healthcare for everyone, universal healthcare. And we'll probably get that one first in California. But yeah, we need to make this happen. And when they tell you, oh, this can't happen because we just don't have the money, remind them, United States is the richest country in the world. We are the richest country in the world. The only problem we have is that you've only got like 10% of the wealthy corporations and the wealthy families that have 90% of the wealth.
Right.
And that cannot continue, because the countries in Europe can have free college for all of their citizens. If you have countries in Latin America that have free college for all their citizens, and then you have a little teeny country called Cuba, which has an economic boycott on it by the United States of America, that has free college for all of their citizens and free healthcare for all of their citizens, then we can do that in the United States of America. Okay, just remember that. And remember, we're going to commit to make that happen. And Nico, before we end, and Kelsey,
yeah,
are we ending now? Because I would like to do a chat with the students.
Yeah, we have more time. So students, if there's any questions from students, they can put it in the chat, and Dolores, we will read them out loud. We did invite students to submit questions ahead of time, which Ella and Michelle did, and we already answered them. We have a question here from Rachel. How did organizing and advocacy affect how farm workers were prioritized in the vaccination campaign? What went well and what could be learned and improved?
Well, thank you for that. And a lot of different organizations that care about farm workers got together and they advocated to the governor, to Governor Newsom, to make farm workers a priority. And I might say, I think the governor's heart was it was in the right place to begin with. By the way, they're passing a farm worker day in the state legislature as we speak. It hasn't passed yet. But then I think the fact that the governor is facing a recall might have also helped.
So Dolores, have you been in the farm worker communities you're still in touch with? Have you been hearing that people are getting vaccinated? I know that in our small town, Del Rey, which is where our farm is, my parents saw you just a week and a half ago. There was a vaccine clinic by Fresno County, and Dr. Joaquin Arambula, who's our district assemblyman to the California Assembly. There was a clinic specifically targeted for farm workers. I know you were there. Can you tell us about the reaction of farm workers being able to get vaccinated?
The farm workers are very happy. And actually, our organization, we have formed a coalition of different organizations, and we call it United Against COVID. And we are actually conducting and hosting several of these vaccination clinics in several of the counties. We're doing that not only in Kern County, Tulare County, and Fresno County, but also up in the Antelope Valley. So we're actually hosting the vaccination clinics, and people are coming. People want to get vaccinated. People want to feel safe, and many of them see members of their family that they haven't seen. And we know that many of the farm workers have lost members of their family that have died to COVID-19. So it's a very, very big topic. And I just want to say also too, that I'm sure there's some international students that might be in our group here. And don't think that because you're not citizens of the United States that you can't help also, okay? So we want to invite you also to join us in helping this law pass, like I mentioned, so the farm workers can get union representation by just signing a card. If you think about it, if your signature is good enough to buy a car, to go to school, to get married, to get a divorce, it should be good enough to be able to say, I want a union, right?
I like that. Absolutely. We have about 5 more minutes and we have one more student question. Kelsey, do you want to read that question?
Sure. This looks like it's from Adriana. Can you talk about the benefits of organizing to change policy and the challenges or barriers you've experienced while organizing communities to change policy?
Well, there's a lot of barriers, as you know, and most of them are political because there are people that want to keep their power. And whether that power is political or that power may be cultural power, as we see what's happening right now. But I think what's happening right now in many ways is kind of good because people are going to be outed. You're going to have to declare yourself whether you're a racist or not a racist. Whether you're a homophobe or not a homophobe, whether you're a sexist or not a sexist. And we're seeing it playing out all over the world really right now. And I think that this is very healthy. It's might be painful to many people. But the changes that we need to make are painful changes. But we know that we've got to make it happen. There's always going to be obstacles. But the main thing is that we don't quit. The road to social justice is a long one. And as we go along that road, we meet people that help us. We meet people that are against us. But from all of those, even those that are against us, we can learn from them also. So the main thing is that people that are against us, we may have a tendency and we may get angry at them, but we know that their racism, their homophobia, their sexism, it comes from ignorance. And so we have to see ourselves as missionaries that are trying to heal them and heal our society. It's like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said. He said, racism is a sickness. So think of yourselves as the healers and to getting out there and to erase that ignorance that people might have, that they have learned from their culture or they learned from their parents. And do it in a nonviolent way, like Gandhi and Dr. King and Cesar Chavez. Always do it, as you might say, instead of hating them, pray for them, but don't stop working, okay? We have to win.
Thank you so much, Dolores. We are just about at the end of our time. I'm so full of gratitude, and your energy is just infectious. And those moments of feeling overwhelmed just feel like they're melting away. And I am just so grateful for your energy and your time, and to follow, hopefully, in your footsteps as a lifelong activist is just a tremendous dream for me. Kelsey, did you want to add anything?
I'm just very grateful to have had these 45 minutes to an hour to learn so much. So thank you. We deeply appreciate you coming.
You're very welcome. Thank you. And then I want to end with a chat. Okay. So I don't know if the students can unmute themselves. If they can all unmute themselves. Okay. Because I'm going to ask y'all a question. And I know that you know the answer to the question. And it's a very simple one. It's something that I always want you to remember. If you don't remember anything else from today, just remember this. Question I'm going to ask you, I'm going to ask you, who has the power? And I want you to answer, we have the power.
We have the power.
The second question I'm going to ask, what kind of power? And I want you to say people power. All right? Okay, can we do that? Okay, let's go. 1, 2, 3. Who's got the power?
We have the power.
What kind of power?
People power.
Oh, are we going to get out there? Are we going to reimagine? Are we going to improve our society and our world? What do we say? And we say this in English, we'll say, yes, we can. And then,
Yes, we can.
We can.
Yes, we can.
and in
Yes,
Spanish,
se puede.
in Spanish,
Sí se puede.
Se puede.
so, you know, at the end of the Catholic Mass, they say, go out and whatever you do. But I'm going to say, go out and change the world, okay? It's here now. Sí se puede. Muchas gracias. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you
Dolores.
so much.
Thank you so much.
Gracias.
Thank you. Sí se puede.
Thank you.
We love you, Dolores.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. We're going to go on a quick break. We'll be back in 10 minutes, so 7:18. Dolores, you're in our hearts. Thank you so much.
No, you're welcome. Thank you very much for inviting me, and hope to see you all soon in person. Okay? Thank you.
You're getting a lot of love in the chat, Dolores. So much gratitude.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. You are absolutely welcome to stay for the rest of class if you want to, but we also know you're doing so many things, especially this month. So we're going to be on a 10-minute break and then come back. So just want to welcome you to stay or depart if you need to go tend to other things.
Yeah, I have another meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Alrighty, team. If you can follow my voice back to your computers, that would be great.
I might have said 7:18, so they might have one more minute.
Okay. Keep moseying. Make a slow walk back to your computer then. Stroll on back.
I want to be fair. I said 7:18.
Love that. Great job.
Extra credit for those of you who are here. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I have no grading powers, so don't listen to me.
I have so much adrenaline right now. I'm sharing that with all of you now instead of just Nikiko. Hello, everyone. Welcome back.
And the world. Well, it's true. Dolores Huerta, 91 years old, like just making me like, yes, we could do
Killing it.
anything.
Yes.
It's amazing.
Yes.
Okay, now we're 7:18. Go for it, Kelsey.
Lovely. Welcome back, everyone. Happy to see your little Zoom faces on the screen. We are going to do a quick poll just to take attendance, but we also just really want to acknowledge that this semester has been a slog, and we are so happy that we are so close to just a little break for us to recenter ourselves and get back into our biggest moments of joy and rest. And so our poll today is just asking how you guys plan to replenish yourselves over break. I'm not able to answer this poll, but I will hopefully be really getting into a lot of good books and rewatching Love Island, which is my favorite reality series for those of you who don't know. And I'm really excited to see a lot of people just choosing to rest and spend some time in nature. All right, waiting for just a few more of you. Okay, I think we can safely assume everyone who has not answered is a community member. So I am going to share the results just for fun and then kick it to Nikiko for our next activity.
Oh, I love this. I'm excited for everybody to get some replenishment next week. And I also want to say thank you to Eva, who's doing our amazing behind the scenes work. We're going to do a quick writing exercise. So you need something to write with. If you prefer pen or pencil and paper, grab it. If you want to type, you're welcome to. I am partial to pen and paper. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes, literally 2 minutes. So just write. And the question is, what stood out to you from the conversation with Dolores Huerta? And stood out can be values neutral. So it, just something that was surprising or interesting or something that stood out. So as timer, you have 2 minutes to write as much as you can, starting now. You're halfway there. You have about a minute left. You can write full sentences or bullet points. It doesn't matter. And if you could start wrapping up your last thoughts, we're going to do one more quick write. So you have about 10 seconds. And stop writing. It's okay if you're mid-sentence. It's okay. These are just activities to help us digest what's happening. So we're going to do a second 2-minute quick write. And this question is looking at our whole time together, our whole semester. The question is, how does today's class, something you heard, something that stood out to you from today, connect with other ideas you've heard, learned, or contemplated across this semester? So where are you seeing connections between Dolores Huerta and other people, other things we have heard this semester? So I'm going to give you 2 minutes again, starting now. You're about halfway through your writing time, so keep writing, keep thinking about connections. About 10 more seconds to wrap up some of your thoughts. And that's time. So take a pause. Thank you for jumping in those writing exercises. I love doing these quick writes because of a couple things. One, they help just give me time to begin to process and digest. And the second thing I love about this is it helps us to turn up the volume on listening to our own intuition and our own reflections. So that, you know, at the end of the day, and the end of this class, it's what you take from it is most important. So we're going to use this writing that we've done to help give us fuel for things to talk about in homeroom, which we're going to go into next. And Kelsey's going to give us some helpful conversation starters if you need them.
Yes, thank you, Nikiko. And I really appreciate you talking about digestion. I think the biggest thing we want to come out of today from our time in homerooms is just thinking about what we didn't know before this evening. So I think if you can ground yourselves in that using some of the free writes you just did or things you're just thinking about as you converse with the people in your homeroom, that is great. If you decide you've talked that through and you want some other things to talk about, what do you want to know more about? With all that you've just learned, what do you want to do with that knowledge? Maybe it's just sitting in it, but it's really up to you to choose your own adventure. And then maybe think through what you're still sort of fuzzy on and where you might look to find out more. So I'm posting those questions or sentence starters in the chat so that as we break out, which will help us do, you can really ground yourselves in that to start a really robust and reflective, hopefully, conversation with each other.
And
We'll have
Kelsey,
about 20 minutes.
20 minutes?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, great.
Sorry, yeah, we're going to give you a little longer time to digest together today. So we'll broadcast when we're about halfway through and give you time warning before we come back. But you're going to get time to really dive into conversation with about 20. All right, welcome back. We're making our way back. Thanks for participating in homeroom. We wanted to offer a slightly different structure for homeroom, in part in response to some of the mid-course evaluations to give you all time to digest together and get into deeper conversations. I know sometimes when you pop back, not everybody's muted, but that's okay. We're here. Kelsey, do you want to join me on Spotlight?
Wait, yeah.
I think I messed it up, but I'm going to try again.
No, you look good to me.
Okay, great.
Excellent. So we have a couple more things to do this evening before we depart for our replenishing spring break time. And Kelsey and I and the teaching team, we wanted to offer like this little small moment to highlight some key takeaways. So I'm going to invite anyone to put any key takeaways that you have. It could be from your free write. It could be from conversation with your colleagues, with your fellow students. Any key takeaways that you are mulling over or thinking about could be about the specifics of Dolores Huerta's talking with us this evening, or connections made across the semester. And Kelsey and we are going to put ourselves on the spot and offer you a few takeaways ourselves, totally unrehearsed, off the cuff, because we are learning just like you all. So I see them coming in the chat already. I love it. And Kelsey, did you want to kick off, or you want me to kick off?
I can kick off. So I think one of the takeaways that I've gotten just from this course as a whole is that everyone can do something at some point. In our very first class, we had Rahana, who has been our youngest speaker. And then today we've had Dolores, who has been keeping it like really strong at 91. I'm so impressed. And so I think it's just, it's been a reminder to me to just step back and not be so obsessed with what can I do and when, and just set my goals and push towards them, but not be so obsessed with when they happen.
I love that. Thinking about the diversity of age that we've had in this class, it is pretty astonishing, right? 16 to yes. And indeed, I see a question in the chat. Yes, as far as I understand, Dolores is 91 years old, which makes me feel like, oh my gosh, I'm doing something wrong. She's doing something right to have all of that energy. And I love, Kelsey, your reflection about like thinking about some of your own barriers to action, and how I think this evening we were reminded of, like, they don't always have to be so complicated. Like, we can just start somewhere and do something. I love that. I just jotted down like a couple of things that I'm going to be thinking about. I was really struck by Dolores's invitation to us to write to our California legislators about this bill in California to make it easier for farm workers to create unions. And what I found particularly fascinating that I want to continue to think about is the way in which policies get translated into bureaucracy that may indeed end up being an added barrier for things. Like, her example of, like, if you can get married, divorced, buy a car with a signature, why wouldn't you be able to join a union with a signature? And thinking about the mechanisms through which policy gets enacted, which may indeed marginalize people more. So I'm thinking about like the bureaucratic barriers of things that I care about, and how to get into the nitty-gritty detail of shaping the policies of our future. So that was one thing. And then Dolores herself made a connection to several of the classes that we've had, connecting the dehumanization of farm workers with the sin of slavery in the United States, and connecting that system and structure of dominance that I know we've talked about. We deeply sharpened our understanding of different forms of racism with that amazing conversation that Shakira Simley put together for us. And then we went deeper, talking with Liz Carlisle, who gave a presentation about the theft of Black land in the United States, and that, that post-Civil War promise of 40 acres and a mule that never happened. So I'm going to continue to think about the ways in which the history of food and agriculture is bound up in anti-Blackness, and then that gets translated in Dolores Huerta's case into anti-brownness, anti-Latino, anti-farm worker. And so that's powerful for me to think about those connections, and what does that mean for how do we organize to overcome them, and the healing that she spoke about. So anyway, that's just me riffing and thinking out loud, unfiltered. So I'll pause there. And I'm seeing some great comments in the chat. The quote from Helen Keller, "Apathy is the greatest illness to humanity." Julian, thank you for remembering that. Some other students' comments about the apathy, the energy of Dolores at 91, using our power, the generosity of Dolores Huerta. Thank you all for adding your voices to our key takeaways this evening. So with that, we're going to turn the last, oh yes, and Natalie, thank you for reminding, watch the film, everyone. It's a really beautiful, and it's a sobering picture about the sacrifices that she and her family made. It's not all just, glitz and glam. I mean, not that her life was glitz and glam, but it's not just the positive side. It's a really well done